Okay, hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video where we'll be talking to one of my fellow Indigenous devs and Cyberpunk uh, Indigenous Futurism makers, creators of the Cyber R or Cyber R Revolution game, which is a very cool game. It just came out in the last little bit, so you can go check it out on itch.io. If you don't do anything else, make sure you do that. But yeah, anyways, so welcome to Santo, and if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name is Santo. I'm the creative director slash like artist slash mostly all around guy who uh, worked on Cyber R Revolution, which is a indigenous cyberpunk action adventure game that I've been working on for like the past like 3 4 years with a couple of my friends. It started out as kind of like a very experimental thing, but then eventually turned into like a pretty like major game. Like it's the I think biggest, longest. It's only about an hour and a half long, but it's definitely the longest thing I've made to date. But yeah, I'm happy to be here to chat about a little bit more about it and answer any questions that anyone might have who has already played it for the first time. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool. I mean, I remember like talking to you about like a year or 2 years ago about the game. It was always a very interesting project with like lots of obviously indigenous art and storytelling and like obviously background because of where it comes from. Um, but it's also set in a interesting future. I think it's called a was it post-war future. I think I was just looking at some of the background on the website here.
Mhm.
Looks.
Yeah, I can expand on that a little bit more just to like contextualize it. But
Mm,
yeah, so and like I guess for like anyone watching who might not be familiar with it, a little bit of background on it is like so like the indigenous aspects of it are specifically inspired by like my own like Guarani family and ancestry. So like I'm originally from Paraguay and like I have some family from there as well, and like part of that comes from like general Guarani ancestry and specifically along like the capital and just outside of there. So that's kind of like the main branch that it's like really informed of in terms of like what inspired like the art and the style for it. And the game itself, the story and like the setting, it technically doesn't take place in our world, but it's kind of like an alternative reality of like a fictional region or maybe a fictional country that um, is fractured because of like imperialistic advances and like war and things like that. And so the game kind of takes place directly after the kind of like main conflict has ended and like how people are coping with like the after war period of like, where do we go from here? Like, do we wanna like, you know, piece back the regions that were kind of split apart because of the way that the war went, or like, do we want to like maybe create a new like nation or something new like from the that was based in like the past, but like something different. So the game, and that's kind of why the game features like three different story routes and like three different characters. Because it basically focuses on like three different views of like characters that have different opinions about like what should happen or what should be done. So that way you kind of get an idea of like, in the afterward period, not necessarily everyone is going to agree with what everyone else wants to do, but like there's kind of a bit of a united front in like the desire for like a stable future where people can be free and have be respected and have dignity and be able to envision themselves in a future that is free from like imperialism and different types of oppression, and despite it all that they can still be free at the end of the day. Essentially that's kind of like the big picture idea, and then like each route has kind of like different views on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, sounds very interesting. Just looking at like some of the website here. So like one of the three, as you kind of mentioned, the different perspectives, like side sepsis, side rebel, and side Barrett. It says like one of them is 10 years have passed since the catalyst event changed the world. The synthetic war, sepsis, and splint, the last remaining veteran pilots of the conflict, head out to scorched earth battlefield once more to retrieve the comrades' fallen unit, perhaps to recover the land that was once theirs. Um, and then so one of them is kind of like um, yeah, and then the second one is the rebel wakes up in an unknown town with a splitting headache and a mysterious augmentation implanted in on their skull, with nothing but a letter and a vague recollection of their past. They befriend the local inhabitants who also happen to be monsters to find out more about this foreign implant. So are these like the three different perspectives, basically, or are there three playable
Yeah.
characters? I see.
Yeah, exactly. So like each character has their own story route, and it has to be completed in like in just like a linear sequence. So in order to like Rebel's route, you would have to complete Sepsis' route first, because then that kind of goes directly into their route, and then to finish the last route, you would have to at least um, finish Rebel's route second, and then you can go to the third, and then after the third route, like that's the final one, but you can get like a secret ending that kind of shows a cutscene of like what happens after all of that, right? And that's only if you can get the secret ending unlocked in Barrett's route. But it is possible to finish Barrett's route. You just don't get the secret ending if you don't get her secret ending, right? But yeah, and like each game also like so each route also has like something different about it, not just the character or the storyline, but so Sepsis route is the first one, and you actually playing like a first person perspective because you're driving a mech around to kind of like explore the territory and things like that. And then the second route is more focused on character dialogue, so it's about you as Rebel talking with like the different inhabitants of the town that you're in, who are also like all based after monsters that are common in like Guarani stories. And then the last route is also a combination of like speaking to characters, but it's broken up in between like action scenes where you're chasing after a train to like shoot at the enemy. So each of them like offers a different storyline, but also different type of gameplay to just reflect how that particular character like sees the world. So at first, like they weren't gonna be like too different, but then I thought that it would be fun to just like play around with that idea of like different modes of gameplay to reflect like different world views. So that way, like you could clearly tell, like, oh yeah, like when I'm in this route, I'm this character, and then when I'm this route, I'm this character, and it's like a separate setting, a very separate style of gameplay. But they do have some things in common with them, with like character dialogue and things like that.
I see. Yeah. So yeah, it's very very interesting. I was just looking at like some of the description and like the background of like what went behind. You kind of touched on the inspiration of indigenous futures or indigenous culture, right? Inspiring the indigenous futurism. And you kind of mentioned there, while um, indigenous cyberpunk is a wide spectrum of styles, expressions, and methods reflective of the indigenous experience. Elements like electrical currents, internet, and other more common examples of technology are not mandatory in order to define indigenous cyberpunk, as it is sovereign, autonomous, and acknowledging indigenous peoples have had complex systems of ways of approaching technology for thousands of years. The goal is to adapt cyberpunk to indigenous needs and conventions rather than the other way around. So I thought it was like interesting. You know, like because we're as both people that are indigenous people that also deal in the futurism and in cyberpunk, you know, spaces. Like, what do you feel is like what do you feel like it is what is adapting cyberpunk to indigenous needs and conventions like mean, or like I don't know if you can like give like some examples of that, because I think like
Mhm.
I've seen some of that in your work, but maybe you could like talk about like what you think that kind of means, especially to maybe like people who you know, they might not be in and not indigenous or not around indigenous spaces, or who have a kind of different perspective on that. Like maybe you can like talk about what do you think that means
Mhm.
to you.
Yeah, so it's definitely kind of like something that I've honed in on in like the last couple of years. Even just like making this project, I've been able to like explore that theory a little bit more. So it's mostly like exploring like what technology can look like um when integrated with in this case, you know, Guarani, but also like other indigenous modes of like thinking about the world, thinking about like the environment, things like that. So to give a like a direct example, so in Cyberrrevolution, the first route, you have these pilots who pilot these like giant machines, right? Like they're meant to be like the size of mountains, like they're huge, right? But at the same time, there's kind of a contradiction where like they're driving these giant machines around, but like no one can really understand how they do it. And despite being like these giant machines, they also move around very quickly. So there's this kind of like contradiction in the technology where it doesn't quite work the way that we expect technology to work. So when I was kind of drafting the script for Cyberrrevolution and kind of like doing the world building with a narrative designer and kind of like trying to brainstorm ways into like making the technology something unique. We just mostly focused on like trying to like not so much ignore, but trying to not think too hard in like our current technological standards and trying to think, you know, in an alternate world where technology was not developed the way that it was in ours, you know, what could that technology then look like? So it ended up being a lot of abstraction, a lot of like concepts of like machines blending in with like organic elements. So those giant machines are also technically powered by the pilot's blood. So like throughout the dialogues in Sepsis Route, you get like more kind of revealing of the world and more explanation behind this. But basically, like the pilots themselves are connected via like all these cables and tubes to the machine, and then the machine and the pilot kind of share like one bloodstream. You know, again, it's not like based obviously on any like hard science or anything that, you know, really exists in our world, but like that's kind of like where we wanted to go more for like the abstraction where like we suspend our disbelief and just come up with technology that even if it doesn't exist in our world, let's imagine a different world where this is possible. Um, and so that's kind of what based a lot of the technology in the first route that you see with like the mechs and the more kind of like I guess like digital like interfaces that happen. And then you have like the other routes as well, where like for like rebels and barracks, like the technology you come across those routes, it's a bit more like analog, but still advanced and like still very like unique in its own way. So like with Barrett's route, for example, like she's a character that lives more out like in the desert where there's been a lot of like environmental impacts because of the war, right? So there's a lot of like droughts and stuff. But then the people like living there have harnessed, you know, different types of technology like solar panels or anything that relies on like solar energy to like help power their homes, and then also different methods of like finding water and things like that. So kind of like trying to blend in things that we are familiar with brand new things that um, are closer to being abstractions, but that are kind of like cool to see executed and that speak more on like a more of a on a metaphorical level than you know, something that it's like I have not researched this, like giant machines don't exist, but you know, it's still something that it is very much based on that abstraction and just kind of expansion of like what technology could be like.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, obviously, when we, when you do science fiction and cyberpunk as a, just the bigger genres. I mean, everything is, it's not, nothing is ever fully like hard, full, officially, like academically rigorous science. So you can try to do some of that. Even like I don't know what is that. The Expanse. I know they talk about like everything is like by the numbers. That's a sci-fi show. But
Mhm.
it's always a little bit of it's always a little bit of it's always Hollywood. It's a little bit of cinema magic or video game storytelling magic because I mean engineering. I mean, as we can both talk
Hmm.
about in the dev space in general, like engineering is not as cool as they make it seem in the Matrix or just the TV shows. You don't have like you're not like banking and diving through like neon lattices all day long. You're like sitting there staring at the screen, typing
Yeah.
text. It can be a bit not necessarily boring because it is interesting and it is like worth it, but it's not as glamorous. The engineering is a lot of
Hmm.
crunch. It's a lot of number crunching and figuring things out, solving, and even like art is a lot of just solving creative practical problems, like how am I gonna make this mech. And anyways,
Hmm.
so I wonder if you could talk about a little bit about like how it's been like with the development itself, like I don't know, with the
Hmm.
teammates, just how it's been going, like how it's been releasing, because releasing a game, like from my experience, like more than half the game dev cycle is for me is after release the game is trying to figure out what to do in that whole
Yeah.
process. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 90% of the game gets done in the last week, realistically. Um, but yeah, in terms of like the development, so this definitely is like the longest game that I've worked on, or longest project in general, like even not counting games or anything, but mostly because like the first year, so 2020, was mostly me like kind of exploring the idea, doing a bunch of tests and seeing kind of like what I wanted to stick with. Then in 2021, I believe, yeah, was when I was able to get a bit of arts funding from the Ontario Arts Council here in Canada, and so I used that money to like get a couple of my friends on board to like um, work on some music, work on some art, work on some narrative design and programming. So we had a bit of a sprint between like mid 2021 to like the fall. Yeah, so for a couple months we like worked on it heads down, and then had a bit of a break because then it was kind of like time to find more funding, which unfortunately we weren't able to get more funding after the fact. So basically from 2022 up until like the release like 2 weeks ago, I was basically working on the game for free along with the programmer Nico, who helped with just setting up the different like systems, like the saving systems, the narrative systems, some other like back end stuff for the game. So we had been kind of working on and off on the game. Obviously, like it was more of a part time commitment for us since like we had full time jobs, and we worked on the game when we could basically. And then the start of 2023, around May 2023, I got laid off from my day job. So then I didn't have a job for about a year. So during that year, I did work on the game on a more full time basis, still for free, unfortunately, but I still worked on it. But I was able to get like a bunch of the stuff done for it. Like the art was a big part of it. The script was also a big part of it that I got done in 2023. And then probably the like bulk of the work for the game build itself in terms of like importing stuff into the build into Unity and then playing it and then testing it and then playing it again probably took place more in like the beginning of this year, so like January up until like again up until the end of August was when a lot of that took place. Like the last even the day that I released the game, I actually was still like bug testing because I had a couple of my friends try the game a little bit early before it was publicly available, and they were able to catch a few things. That it was like a very quick and easy fix. So luckily, post launch now has been mostly focused on like promoting the game, seeing what upcoming events it could be submitted to, writing all those proposals, making sure to promote the game online just so people know it's out. And luckily, so far, I haven't had any like emails from people having issues with the game. So I want to say that right now there are no like bugs with it or anything like that. There's technically like one bug with the game that I have, if you go to the HIO page, you'll see what the bug is there. But so far, I haven't had any reports on that. It's like a really specific bug that can only be replicated a very specific way. So I'm hoping that people just aren't running into it as much. But yeah, pretty happy with like the reception in general. Um, it seems to have been pretty positive. It only came out on HIO, so I probably won't have it out on Steam just because I like doing I like the way that game uploads work a little bit better on itch.io and like handling like updates and things like that. Um, but yeah, it seems to be going well. And I guess for anyone watching, if and I'm always posting about this every now and then just to remind people, but like if there's ever anyone who like wants to write about the game, doesn't have to be for like a journal or anything like that. Could be your own blog if you wanted to. I'm more than happy to provide people with codes if they're just interested in like streaming it or like writing about it, just because I'm all about like I would rather people play it than not. So if it's for that particular case, like I'm more than happy to share the game with people. But yeah, just mostly focusing on promoting it as much as possible. Um, and yeah, like hoping that it gets, it reaches the right audience, stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, reaching the right audience is a trick. That's like a lot of a lot of my time is spent trying to figure out that problem, because yeah, it's not every single person is gonna necessarily be into especially indie games. So and for specific types of indie games, so that can be a bit tricky. But yeah, word of mouth and just getting people to play and stream and share and write things about the your game is definitely a huge part of that.
Mhm.
For indie devs specifically, less so for for Activision and EA. I think they'd be okay. But
Yeah,
they're gonna get talked about either way.
yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, so yeah. I guess is there anything else that like you know when you're working on the game, like I know you kind of have this team that's all around the world. I think I'm not sure if I think you brought that up, but it's kind of like I remember you mentioning there were like there's some people from the Philippines. Obviously you're from you're Guarani, right, from South
Par-
America. Was it
Paraguay,
Paraguay?
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So then and so there's like a whole variety of different indigenous perspectives that went into the game, because obviously there's a lot of shared there's many shared indigenous experiences around the world,
Mhm.
but each one is like slightly different. What's some ways that like when you were incorporating all these different indigenous perspectives from around the world, like what's some like ways that like this like this aspect
Mhm.
from Philippines or this other element from another place, kind of how did that work into the game?
Yeah, I think it definitely worked itself in more in the terms of like the storyline and like the narrative aspects of the game. Just because the game deals a lot with things like I think with like universal concepts that anyone that is from like an indigenous group or anywhere that has been affected by like imperialism or war or climate change, environmental disasters can identify with. So a lot of the game tackles like very humanized characters that have kind of like been through the worst that like imperialism can offer, and in that sense that's something that a lot of us can relate to globally. So I think that's probably where it has reflected that kind of like international like solidarity, I guess, in the like best way. So you have, for example, like different NPCs that you might talk to that kind of view the end of the conflict or the kind of pause of the conflict differently. Like some are like a little bit apathetic about it, others are like more hopeful, but still kind of like wary of like what might happen, in the future. And I think that's kind of a feeling that anyone, regardless of like where they might be in the world, can definitely feel. So I think a lot of that international influence focuses a lot on like what the shared struggles are and like what the how history has like overlapped in many ways for different people across the world. And I mean, while I was making Cyberrrevolution, I also like read a bunch of different texts about like different events around the world that were fueled by imperialism, and trying to connect the dots of like the familiarities between those things, and how like people around the world might experience like different incarnations of imperialism, or they might experience like different versions of it. But the kind of like at the end of the day, we have that same experience with it, and that's kind of like what can build our solidarity with each other. And yeah, I think that's kind of the main way that that international perspective worked its way in. But yeah, definitely more on the narrative, more so than the like visual aesthetic of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely something that you can see. Kind of coming out. It's an element that international perspective. I think you mentioned Pacific Rim was something in a previous conversation, and like because it's obviously giant mechs being a part of that. But remember, like in
Mm-hmm.
Pacific Rim, that was one of those as a culture, as like a global cultural like zeitgeist shifting element phenomenon. Uh, One of the things about that, I guess it's not necessarily the same as this game, but like it has some overlap. Is number one, uh, the main well, technically I think it's an American main character, but a lot of the countries and the places that are like leading, because there's like Russia, and there's China, there's it's not the U.S. and the Europeans that are like the leading
Mm-hmm.
the historical imperialist powers. There's like it's a lot of global majority, let's say, countries that are leading with these huge mechs that are fighting these kaiju, these huge monsters that are kind of like
Mm-hmm.
metaphors kind of for things like climate change, pandemics, huge problems in some ways, right? And like some countries are kind of just not walling themselves off, kind of not doing much. Historical imperial places are kind of walling themselves off, and other ones are trying to struggle together, kind of being left simultaneously being left out, right? As climate, you kind of mentioned climate change is one of the problems that people are struggling with
Mm-hmm.
in Cyberrrevolution. But like historically, right? Because in historically, I think it's like global north has taken like 450 trillion from imperialized places like Central South American countries, the Philippines, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And they're simultaneously being hit. The imperialized, colonized are hit with the worst impacts of the climate change, and then also have to kind of try to solve it themselves. I mean, I was just thinking of I mean, the real world. You have like South America. The United States is currently trying to coup. Well, they're always trying to coup every single country they possibly can, take all the resources as always, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Bolivia is like it has the world's largest like lithium reserves. It also has like a large Guarani and other indigenous populations, and it's also
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the biggest majority indigenous country
Yeah.
in South America,
Mm-hmm.
60%, right? But they also like they're like having to resist simultaneously the imperialism that's being it's this is kind of like in the present, like this your game isn't set in the future, but it's kind of like echoing, as you said, kind of like the struggles of the present. So they're having to resist the
Mm-hmm.
continued imperialism to steal all the resources to do quote unquote green imperialism. I don't know what that even is, but at the same time they're resisting the overthrows, the sanction attempts to foment far right over taking over their countries, color revolutions all over the place. They're
Mm-hmm.
simultaneous. I think Vietnam is just having one as we speak. And speaking of the Pacific Rim, and so like having that struggle while you're also like what believes also like working on making their own solar, and I mean not just them, but many of the Central South American countries are trying to work
Mm-hmm.
on their own green technology. And while the global north continues to just try to, I don't know what they're doing, they're just sanctioning and trying to tariff out of existence EVs and renewable tech. And anyway, obviously I'm kind of spiraling out into the current events, but I don't, it's kind of like it's hard to not see these parallels.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah. Sorry, I'll stop rambling.
Oh, no, no, that's okay. Yeah, no, I think it definitely like it's connected to a lot of like real world things as well, even though like it is meant to be taking place in like an alternate reality that is separate from ours. It definitely, does take inspiration and basis out of like obviously like real world things. Like for example, especially the last route, the Barrett's route, like that one was very heavily inspired by like different peasant movements that exist, not just within Paraguay, but also like within South America as well. Like there's different like peasant movements that are about, having ownership of the land again, having like sustainable ownership of the land, making sure that peasants are able to own their labor and like live off their labor rather than working for like whoever the landowner or private corporation happens to be that owns their land. Um, and then specifically in Paraguay, like I follow different like peasant advocacy groups and peasant movements that focus a lot about like not a lot of different things that affect people in the countryside, peasants and different indigenous groups alike. Specifically about like food scarcity, the fact that like because of climate change, so much of the land isn't, it's not being used to actually grow food for the people. It's being used to like grow what is called, I believe, it's um, like a monoculture crop. So like things like soybeans and things like that that are not native to that particular environment. So they're being a lot of the land is being used to grow food for profit, not for actually feeding people. So like that's one of the crises that they're always having to deal with because like they have to be able to grow sustainable food to like feed themselves, but because of the like I think in Paraguay it's something like 99% of farmland is owned by like private corporations like landlords. So a lot of that just like is not usable to actually feed people. And if you try to like take back your own land or you try to use the land for something else that is not for the corporations or for private ownership, like the landowners are very aggressive and like they will hire people to like kill your family or kill you or intimidate you to like stop doing that. So like it is like very much a life or death thing to just be able to like plant beans to feed your family with, to like eat beans and rice, which is one of the staple meals that people eat. Um, which again, that's kind of reflected in some of the routes where, like in Rebel's route, you can gather different items, and each item will have a description that kind of like it's just some flavor text that reveals more about the story. But you can like grab a can of beans and like it'll talk about how you know things became scarce after the war and like people had to pick and choose what could they grow, and like the things they could grow became limited because so much of the land had been made kind of like had been destroyed by the war, things like that, and like had been taken away, so people had to like pick and choose what they could plant. And then oh, but here's a can of beans you found, and like it kind of reminds you of like, oh yeah, like I haven't had beans in a very long time because like beans just aren't being grown as much. So there's like those little connections in the narrative, like with like the real world things. And they're kind of like spread out throughout the game as well, in different ways. Like definitely, like I would say the biggest kind of overarching thing that is based a lot in like real world things, other than biggest probably being like imperialism, things like that. But the other big one also being like the environment and like the ways in which um imperialism creates war, creates conflict, and then those wars and those conflicts destroy the environment, make it uninhabitable for the native population. And how that's very much a strategy and a tactic of imperialism and colonialism to like make a place uninhabitable for everyone. And then you have the different characters coping with like the effects of the environmental changes around them. How what are we going to do after this? Like, do we keep going? Especially for like sepsis route. There's a conversation that the characters have like further on into the story where like they kind of debate, do we even keep going here? Like, it's like the land is like pretty destroyed. Like, there's not really anything here for us. But then it's kind of reinforced that like it is necessary for them to like go through with this to make sure that like even if this land is like destroyed at this moment, that doesn't mean that it will always be destroyed, right? Just because some place has been, torn apart doesn't mean that it can't be restored in some way, even if like obviously that is a big undertaking and it might seem hopeless, but like it is worth a try still. So that's kind of a lot of like what the first story route focuses on. But yeah, definitely a lot of different like historical influences as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. We brought up like how like the land, or they won't even let you plant the. They wouldn't even let people plant their beans. I mean, like it's the basic staple foods. Like in Hawaii, like we have less extreme levels of like that kind of imperialism happening because we still like have that similar. They do try to stop us from planting as much as
Mm-hmm.
possible. The United States, in its occupation of the country of Hawaii, they try very hard to stop the planting of anything. And like the yeah, and the like it's always kind of like those are definitely like different kinds of struggles, different kinds of questions, different experiences that are just kind of like they're just like not had by
Mm-hmm.
colonizers or people that are incorporate. You could be from a colonized place, but if you know are in the
Mm-hmm.
metropole, if you're in the core imperial core, you may not have to ask that question, or you may not. You're in your ancestry, maybe they did, but it's not as direct. And so like those are like so I find it kind of
Mm-hmm.
like there's like a almost like a struggle like between sometimes like as indigenous devs, right, or indigenous devs are making games but we're like publishing games, like obviously we're publishing it for global audiences, but it's kind of like it can be always kind of like a where is this aimed at? Is this going to be sold to like I mean,
Mm-hmm.
some white or Western person in California with money to buy it? Or is it going to go to somebody who can't afford it, but is actually like, I mean, not to say that they can't afford it, because a lot of people can't afford these things, but it can be a tricky thing. Like, so that's something I asked myself. I'm like, because some people just, like, I remember I toy with like, or just test, like, I'm like, screenshots of Neofeud 2, and I'm like, because Neofeud 2 deals with like
Mm-hmm.
very similar to what you're dealing with, like the imperial the imperialized colonized people's perspectives, right? But then somebody just posted a Steam review of Neofeud, and they were like, I like this game because I like the rusty robots and having taking wires out of, putting olive oil into your cyber arm and like these massive sprawling for. They like the the cool. The dystopia is like this cool, you know, it's like a white Gen Xer getting lost in New York and being poor for like 5 minutes, and then but thinking that was really cool, and then writing about that for the rest of their life in like Vancouver or something. And like that's, I mean, I don't want to say that's a lot of what cyberpunk is, but it kind of is. And but at the same time, it's kind of like, and this person said, I really like Neofeud because it's got this really cool dystopian feel to it, but like I think my politics are different. I think this like I'm a libertarian upper class 60-year-old white man. He didn't say that, but he basically was implying. And it's like I don't really care about these robots that much, and mostly their welfare cleans. And I'd probably want to clean up this trash. And I was like, so it's this weird paradox where it's like the people that like sometimes get historically, well, they have the assets to spend like hundreds, thousands, even millions of dollars on games. That's what they say.
Mm-hmm.
Modern games are like, they make one AAA game and they sell it to like 50 millionaires, and each millionaire pays like five, or a billionaire, and they said each millionaire plays like $5 million for the coolest character ever, and that's what the game runs on. It's not really about like,
Mm-hmm.
right. It's like trying to chase these bigger and bigger ultra rich imperial whales, and
Mm-hmm.
or even like maybe the first world people that have money, obviously, but there is a growing, obviously, multipolar world as things shift. But then you also have to like, those have like different cultural contexts, and like it's just, anyway, long story short, I think I'm just kind of like spiraling out about my own, the way that like games are perceived is like when you're making games inside of, let's say, the US, Canada, global north. It can always be a tricky thing, especially when you're an indigenous person, because you want to kind of speak to your own experiences, and but but it can be tricky to kind of figure out where to target that. I don't know if I'm making any sense right now, but I find it's a bit weird. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that is like a valid like thing to think about as you're working on a game, because like you do have to kind of like think about who might be playing it, or who am I making this for. Like when I was making as I was making this game, like it kind of like was a concern of mine at some point, but then I didn't think too hard about it, in the sense that um like in the past I didn't necessarily like target an audience, but it eventually did find its audience like organically. Um, and like for this one, I'm definitely was aiming more like, if I can think of like an audience, more about just people that you know want something different from cyberpunk, or like are looking for like an alternative, or like who may not like cyberpunk at all, but maybe this will be maybe not their first, but one of the first times that like they feel that they can approach cyberpunk like in a more familiar way, or to make it like a bit more different for them. And the other part of this is also that like um, obviously, like I would love for people to pay for the game, but I'm also not I'm not expecting this game to necessarily pay my bills, but I am being like very open with people that like, if you really want to play this game and like you cannot afford it, just talk to me, or like DM any social media I might have, or like email the studio email that I have listed on like the Twitter profile, and like we can work something out. But like at the same time, I would love it if people bought the game, because then for that period of time that I worked on it for free, as well as like Nico worked on it for free, like I would love to for us to like cover that period of time as much as possible. I don't think that we will. Like, I don't want to count on that being the case. But like, it would be awesome if we could be able to cover that through the sales. But at the same time, I do want people to like enjoy the game, say nice things about it. If you play the game, you can leave a review on itch.io, which like it doesn't affect the algorithm or anything. Like it does not. It's not like Steam in that way, but it's still nice. It's still nice to like get positive reviews on the game and see what people have to say about it. I hope to continue talking about the game for the next couple months before I'm totally exhausted about it. But yeah, it's definitely something that when you're releasing anything, really, even outside of games, it's like, yeah, I guess I should kind of think of who I'm ideally envisioning interacting with this, and if I care about it, or if I just want it to, be released and exist out there, and then find its audience as it will, like organically. Because I know, like, obviously, this can be a very different question if you're someone with like funding that is like specifically you have to promote it a certain way, right? That's kind of like the upside of like not having funding for the rest of the game, is that we weren't like indebted to anyone, or we weren't like beholden to anyone's like standards when it came to that. Like the arts funding that I was able to apply for and get, like they don't ask for any kind of like marketing input, or like it's they just want to see art being made, right? So it's not like they're expecting you to like make a certain amount of money, or like spend a certain amount of money on marketing, because there were other funds that I applied for that it's like, oh yeah, you have to spend at least like this much of the funding on marketing. You have to hire someone for marketing, and then after the game is done, you have to hand in these data reports of like how well the game is performing, things like that. Luckily, obviously the upside of that is like we didn't get funding, but at least we didn't have to deal with that aspect of funding. And um, I'm at a point in my life where like I would rather like just have complete creative freedom of over the art that I make, than having to like spend, I don't know, 3 months of my life doing a data analysis spreadsheet for
Mhm.
like the person or the corporation or whoever gave me the funding to, show them that their money was effective, which like it probably won't make as much money as they expected it to. Which it and this whole thing always makes me think a lot about like I am just trying to also change my approach to how I make art, because for so long I was stuck in that mode of like, oh, I gotta pitch this somewhere, or like I gotta pitch this to someone, or I have to like get the funding and chase after the funding. And nowadays I'm just glad to like create something and release it, because um like part of the reason why this project took so long is because of that chasing after the funding, right? That it's like a never ending thing that artists have to do sometimes, and I am very tired of it. And going forward, I'm probably just going to make art for myself in that sense. um, because I don't want to spend another 4 years making another project that is taking 4 years, because not so much because I'm not working on it, but because there's like a lack of funding for the particular game or project or anything else.
Yeah, I definitely hear that one. I mean, from the people that several other indie devs that I talked to, especially ones that that have gotten funding from similar sorts of grants, and got the, I think our friend Megan Byrne at the Hill Agency, they had several supporters, but which can help, because then it can expand the scope of the game and take care of some of the financial keep people in their houses and eating food and stuff while they're working on the games. But then it does come with they are like double-edged swords. And like, I mean, I definitely like, your trajectory seems like more similar to mine, which is Neofeud. I didn't get it. There was Neofeud is a zero funding game. Just I was working basically full time and then part time towards the very end. For most of Neofeud, I was working full time. I was teaching STEM, game programming, and to underserved youth in Hawaii. Just poor kids basically. And then in the evening, I was working on the game. Basically, just on my free time, like kind of like what I think you said, what you're doing. And so then I was like, and when it comes out, like you said, hopefully this will make, you said, I hope that the free time that myself and our fellow devs have spent we'll get some money back for that time to cover that. It's basically my thought. I was like, when I release this game, I'm gonna hopefully, I might sell like 10 copies, and like not including my mom and dad and my sister and 3 friends. That'll be the only people that ever play the game. Mostly Neofeud will just sit in like 15 Steam libraries, and that will be the end of it. And but if that doesn't happen and it gets more sales, right, then that's good. That's great. Like, and try to cover. I think at this point, the game has gotten, it's like 80. Actually, we're getting close to like 80, 90,000 over 7 years. So that's not the best, but I mean, it is like a slow burn sort of situation for some indie games. I can't guarantee, like, that's not anybody listening to this, I cannot, full disclosure, I am not a certified portfolio wealth management person. I cannot guarantee you $80,000 in 7 years if you make an indie game, or even 50. But anyway, but it's if you do, like, if you do promote it, and it's just weird how these things work. It's not very fair. It's not very fair. It's it's a lot of luck. It's kind of like, will some big channel pick it up, or will certain people spread it, or will people not be so burnt out trying to, like, necessarily like free Palestine and do other things. I shouldn't have said that already. So we can get the video scene. I mean, thinking about how you're gonna get censored if you even try to do anything remotely interesting or morally correct in the West. So that's a whole stressful aspect of it. And so it's really like, because you're trying to, losing funding because you're taking stances, losing your job is just like that itself is such a hard part of it. But like, I feel like, you have, like you kind of said, like, you have to just kind of like, have faith in the project. It is a lot of luck, but like, the more lottery tickets you buy, if you stand closer to where the waterfall is approximately, you might catch more water. It's kind of like, that's the way I kind of think about it, is like, you just keep promoting. It can be exhausting though, as you said. You said you're gonna do a few more months of promoting it. It can be. It can. Sometimes I feel exhausted. Sometimes I feel like I have stopped being the person who made Neofeud. I am simply a Neofeud. I'm a Neofeud journalist. Also, I'm like I'm an acolyte. I am the prime Praetorian. I'm a historian of Neofeud now. I don't even know what I did to make it. All I know is I talk about
I
it in
eat,
marketing.
breathe.
Yeah, I eat, breathe, sleep it. I mean, and so I'm almost kind of exhausted. I mean, I don't want to say I'm exhausted by it. This making the second one has been exhausting, but it's kind of, it can, like, it can get like, I totally get when like creatives and George R. R. Martin is like, I can't go back, and I'm sorry, I can't finish your Westeros, I can't finish your Ice and Fire stuff. And like William Gibson, he's also like, I was talking to him, he's like, I am not the person who made Neuromancer. I'm so sorry. I can't make you another original Cyberpunk, because I'm an older guy. I have like grandkids. I'm like old and tired. I'm not that person. And I totally, anyway. Let me stop ranting about that. But so anyway, long story short, I think that it has a lot of definitely like potential, and like you're totally right that like the like the audiences, I think, will eventually find the games that really these games are made for. Every day, I mean, I find somebody that like I don't even have time to go and like look at all of the reviews, and people ask me to come watch my Twitch stream of Neofeud. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have time to do that. And but like that like the position of more people like talking about it and getting feedback about it, that you can't even take it all in. It does take, in the beginning, especially for indie games, it can take some time to build up to that, especially if you don't like if you launch day one and it's on, obviously you don't have to put it on Steam, but if you launch day one and it's on Steam and it becomes in the top 10 of that day, it'll kind of instantly be propelled into this new level of visibility. But not everybody's gonna get that, right? 60 games launch a day on Steam, last I checked. So,
yeah.
But anyway, long story short, I think it's really good. I hope that this goes as far as possible. Silverspook officially recommends the Cyberrrevolution. So everybody who follows me, you better. I think I don't know how many people follow me across all the platforms. You better be picking this game up, or there will be hell to pay in Cyberpunk Purgatory.
Anyway. It's like if I don't see your name in the notifications within the next 10 minutes. That's just kidding. But yeah, no, I do have to start wrapping up because I have a crazy schedule. For anyone who isn't aware, I'm like on an overnight schedule right now for my day job. So my bedtime is like about 5:30 p.m. like Central, and then I wake up around midnight or something like that. And I'm trying to keep that schedule for the weekend, because if I let it get away from me over the weekend, when I try to actually go to bed at the appropriate time on Sunday, I don't go to sleep, and then I end up not sleeping, and then I wake up Monday, and it's I'm stuck in that cycle right now. I'm hoping to break free of it soon, but yeah, I guess the last thing I also want to say is like I do really appreciate anyone who's picking up the game. If anyone wants to like talk to me about the game, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm kind of warming up to the idea of talking about my projects again. But yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on, and yeah, I hope that anyone who tries the game has a fun time with it, as much as that is possible. And I will hopefully continue just talking about it for the next couple months, and then I will disappear into the core of the earth for a bit, probably.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, again, thanks so much for coming on. Don't forget to check out the Palo Santo in all the places. Check out the go ahead, yeah.
Blue Sky. Yeah, I was gonna say like I don't do Twitter anymore for like my main public account, but you can find me on Blue Sky under just Santo, and then Twitter, if you're still on there, there's just the Brujeria at Work Twitter account, which like I'm managing right now, but I'm not really actively monitoring it. But like if people reply, I will do my best to get back to you there. But best spot to reach me at personally is Blue Sky. There's also the Brujeria at Work itch.io page. I'm also keeping an eye on that if anyone like leaves comments or anything like that, or reviews, and wherever you find the contact email for the art collective, I will also be monitoring that a bit closely.
Yeah, definitely follow Santo in all those places, and yeah, get Cyberrrevolution, and yeah, I know you gotta get. I'm gonna let you go because I know you gotta get to sleep. So thanks again. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on again.
Thanks. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye. Um. Anyways, so yeah, so that was a Cyber R Revolution chat. Since I normally do like a Saturday event that goes on for a bit longer than this today, I figured I'll just kind of continue on a little bit longer. Um, Talking about Indigenous Futurism and Cyberpunk with myself. I'll just be dancing with myself in the room now for a little bit. If people do have questions about Neofeud 2, I did a kind of Neofeud 2, another indigenous created cyberpunk science fictional futurism based game. I will be now doing another Neofeud 2. You can feel free to ask questions in the chat. I'm gonna put these strange looking glasses on right now. I don't know if this is gonna weird people out, but I can't read my screen very well if I don't do this for an extended period of time. So I'm just gonna put this on. But anyways, yeah. So if you have any questions about Neofeud 2, which I'm still working on, I'm working on it as fast as humanly possible. I'm like I'm technically, I have completed Neofeud 2 to the point of the very final scene of the game, or the very final click, the official final click in the point and click adventure Neofeud 2 is done. So or technically there's one last click. What if you gotta click the exit button to exit the program, or fast forward the credits if you don't want to watch it all. Please watch all the credits, because I spent 7 years working on this game. And there are more people who will work on the game, especially voice acting, very soon. But the final click of the in-game game is done, so that's where it's at. I'm not quite ready to put out the casting. I still got to go back and clean up. I don't have the entire script file. Once I get the full complete final script, like the dialogue script, like the Hollywood screenplay script, not like the C# and the JavaScript code, but like when I get the actual all of the lines, like a Hollywood movie for Neofeud 2, at that point I will be sending out a casting call for auditions for people who want to voice act in the game, because I will need voice acting. But I'm not done with that. I still have to go back and clean some stuff up, fix up problems and stuff. But Neofeud 2 is done, start to finish. Every puzzle in the game, all the gameplay in Neofeud 2 is done. I said it was supposed to be done by end of August 31st. Now it is definitely done. Also, what's up to Alex Corolla? Anyways, but yeah, if you do have any questions about that, feel free to bring it up. I'm just gonna go and look at random stuff at this point. About it. Oh, don't forget, Neofeud 1 is on sale. So if you have not picked up the first one, Neofeud 1 is 70% off. Please help us pay some indigenous indie dev bills and keep a roof over our heads as over the kids, as well as complete Neofeud 2. It's not, as I still have debugging work. I still have obviously music work, this voice work. I'm gonna voice characters in the game, so I still got to do the voice acting, and I got to add that to the game. So that stuff's not done, but like the actual core game itself is done. Obviously the credit scene is not done. The title screen is not done. The completed intro is not done, because I usually with Neofeud 1 I did the intro sequence at the very end, because that's something that is kind of depends on one secret in dev is that like the first bit of the game is completed last, and the most time is spent on that, because half of players will leave the game before finishing the first level, right? So you really got to make that beginning. It's like YouTube videos, right? People put the most effort into the very first minute, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes of the video, because that is gonna make or break whether people stick around. And if people stick around more than a minute, they tend to stick around for more. If people that stick around for 15 seconds, there's a high probability to stick around for a minute. And if you stick around for a minute, you get the point, right? So I'm going to finish Neofeud at the intro last. But the gameplay itself is done. Minus, like, I got to go back and change things. I got to go fix things still. Yeah. Also, what's up to Neuro Riot? Thanks for hopping in there. So don't forget to check that out. If you want to look up, here's a thread about how Neofeud reflects my life as an impoverished Native Hawaiian, a social worker and STEM teacher for poor and homeless homeless living in slums beneath billionaire mansions, and how Neofeud is my experiences reflected through the lens of satirical cyberpunk. I have read this before, so I'm not going to do that right now, but you can go and find that. I'm gonna briefly show the Neofeud 1 trailer, and then I'll be right back after this. And if you have questions about where Neofeud 2 is, this is again gonna be like a, so I will be more closely looking at the chat, for people who have questions about or related to Neofeud 2, the development, or it doesn't have to specifically be like the game itself. It could be related to Indigenous, or it could be related to the game dev or whatever. Just nothing inappropriate, obviously. I'll be right back after this.
The Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller. Not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
I had to build my own family. I ain't your son. I ain't your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You in whose army, princess? You in whose army?
So anyway, yeah, Neofeud is on sale right now, so it's not. You can go and get it on the Steam or itch.io. It is on Steam and also on itch.io, so consider doing that because it does help us to keep on working on streaming, educating, doing activism, and of course finishing Neofeud 2. When I'm done with Neofeud 2, I'm already thinking about other projects to work on after that. Nothing is set in stone yet, but there's a lot of things potentially on the back burner that could move to the front burner. If you do have a second, if you did enjoy Neofeud 1 and you have something to say or just want to help us out, if you can leave even a very short review, it does help us to get the game discovered in the Steam algorithm. It really does help us out because it's like a comment in a YouTube video, or it's like a reply on social media post it in a quote tweet, it really helps the thing. It helps the game get discovered. That's just how these sites work. Anyway, I think I already read that one. This was an interesting review that somebody had of Neofeud. I'll read some of it again. I found this very interesting because it's somebody who actually has a different political bent. I'm not sure exactly where they come from, but they really appreciated Neofeud, even though I talked about like who is the target audience for Neofeud 2 and these Silver Spook games, right? Is it like people, obviously gamer, people who play games, but is it like, the first world, I don't know, average upper middle class 60-year-old Californian? Is it, a New Yorker and Londonite? Is it like a more general audience? Is it like, younger, Gen Z, people who are, obviously it's a variety of that. It's like Gen Z people who played Valhalla and they want some more visual novel, or something like, I don't know, people who play Disco Elysium is some people who there's a lot of overlap there. But it's always interesting to hear different perspectives on the game, because people coming, is it like a left activist who is currently at a free Palestine rally? I can't even say that because of who runs this channel, who runs this platform, but or is it like people who are at brunch? I don't really want to make it for people who are like extremely well off, at brunch. Unfortunately, some of those people have money to spend on video games. It's a difficult conundrum, sometimes, but it's interesting to hear like different perspectives, because there are many different perspectives of players, and obviously like games are political, like everything is inherently political, but also like those perspectives, like I feel like they're more and more what am I trying to say, like the people will like actively simply not buy a thing based upon what they perceive the politics is, and some of those sometimes is for very good reasons, especially if there's like heinous crimes committed by the developer or something, or the creator of a movie or a show, and those make total sense. I also want people who are like, not so politically aware to also like learn things, that they might not otherwise, or they might have different politics than me, let's say, but I would also like them to like learn things. Or maybe they don't learn too much, but maybe they think about things in a different way when they play Neofeud or Neofeud 2. So anyway, enough talking about this, and actually read it. So the game Neofeud is a game that is all about grungy digital sidewalk art, the exhaustively detailed ideas, the cyberpunk lore. The puzzles are secondary, though there is a handful of traditional point-and-click hurdles here, and they're only for genre flavor. What you get with Neofeud is tantamount to an interactive story, a fascinating journey into a literally mixed media world lived in aesthetic that I dub junkpunk. The adventure takes place in a flacked up continuity where, that's the fictional swear word in the Neofeud universe, science fictional swear word like fracking or drecking or I don't know, dragging, jagging. It's like jizz in Star Wars, which is a form of music. Anyways, enough derailing myself. What you get with Neofeud is tantamount to an interactive story. That is, I dub. Sorry. The adventure takes place in a flacked up continuity where robots get high on lithium until they blue screen on the sidewalk. Chimeric demi people live in shipping containers. Favelas try to jack free power from killer electric meters. The style, like the world, is somewhat junky too, but it looks so good in all its expressive soul-soaked junkiness. Every rusted through goo dripping part is incomplete. Dissonant unity with every other, and the way each object or character would look in any other style can be easily imagined. And in general, that is the success of a style. It's thick enough to carry its own rich personality, yet is transparent enough for symbolic clarity, for every consciously included detail to be readable by all those inside, not inside the brain case of the creator. Like in Neil Blomkamp's film Elysium, society is split into two stark sections in the world of Neofeud. The world of corporate states below, a place of garbage mountains as big as the Rockies of city-sized permanent tent settlements populated by a junky mixture of humans beset by nanotech-borne diseases, crippled robots shell-shocked from their time subduing a radioactive Europe, and mutant refugees from various macro-scale gene splicing experiments. Up and above are the 1% in their floating sky fortresses. Those who travel the stars, reap the resources of the asteroid belt, experiment on the sentience of all worlds to their heart's content, and in general incessantly seek ways to amplify their own power and pleasure. A horrible amplification of where the United States is headed, maybe, with a patina of satire on the surface and a whole big book of serious world building just below. Anyways, all of that for the first, that is all very accurate in terms of what Neofeud is. It's so novel that in this cyberpunk junk punk exploration, you're not controlling another Deckard type detective, that's easy out, but a science fictional social worker, one of those guys who has to keep up with the robotic welfare queens and tentacled lower orders, making sure that they're getting the benefits due them and not getting high while smacking their poorly assembled kids around. I really like Carl Carbon as a protagonist. He has an obvious pity for these miserable collage people, but he also knows the wrong things they're capable of and doesn't try to sugarcoat it. Carl, I assume, is sort of a murky mirror for the game's creator, Silverspook, who obviously is quite liberal. And this is the part where I don't know if this person, I'm not sure who this person is, but it's like I get this. I picture this person as like a 60-year-old, isn't happy about the Ukraine war Republican, That's the kind of person I picture. I'm not sure, but that's what I picture. Because the way they use the word liberal, it's liberal in the sense of like when Richard Nixon said liberal, It's just like Democrat, something. It means something very different to, like, liberal means something different to Gen Z and Gen Alpha and millennials. Than this, so that's why I find it interesting, because it's like we're talking with different words meaning different things. Anyways, though politically I cannot agree on certain things, I'd probably be one of those humanity first goons in his universe. So some kind of Trumpite, like, America first, somebody who wore maybe wore a MAGA hat at some point, but still like the Neofeud. Obviously I'm not pro MAGA, you know me very well, my stances on these things, but I find that very interesting. Anyways, I most certainly do sympathize with Spook's frustrations over the disgusting billionaire hoarders of power and profit who wrote our society out of balance just to pursue their base desires, for whom gutting whole economies with sanctions is on the up and up. Fomenting destructive proxy wars is perfectly justifiable, and carpet bombing a country-sized ghetto full of civilians is just business as usual, or maybe even a good old time. Neofeud proves to me once again that you don't have to be sitting on the same notch of the political spectrum as anybody to enjoy their art, and this is an amazing one. A one-man show apart from some of the voice actors, and heck, I never would have guessed that the robotic protege and the ridden, hard, and put-up wet Carl Carbon were both voiced by the very guy who crafted this big woolly experience. I'm all in for Neofeud 2, which is coming soon. So anyway, so that I find that I was just like, you could like totally get a lot of it, and like also like obviously I agree that we shouldn't have horrible proxy wars, gutting economies and sanctioning countries, and bombing endless numbers of civilians is not. But this is also reflected in like kind of like in modern day today's politics, right? Like the U.S. presidential elections obviously coming up, and most average people, I think, in the United States are not happy with the children being blown up. I think they don't really want that to continue, right? They don't want to see more of that. They don't want to have to deal with more of that on the screens. Across the spectrum, the only people that really want that to keep happening, killing children. Even the Pope came out today and said one party is deporting all of these immigrants and treating those people badly, and another presidential candidate is killing all the babies, and choose the lesser of two evils. And it's like so that's causing like an interesting political. So the United States is in a different place. Like the Green Party for the first time is like seriously could take away like 5, even 10% of the U.S. Electorate. That's a new thing. I'm not gonna get too deep into that at this moment, but that is something. There's a different phenomenon happening now, I think, than has been the case in the past. Yeah. Anyway, so long story short, that's just I was supposed to be talking about the game, not necessarily the politics of all of this stuff. But yeah, so Neofeud is a game that does deal with all of those topics. I do deal with the impacts of biological experimentation, half human, half animal hybrids, eugenics experiments that are being dumped out of their corporate ecologies and then treated like tissue paper waste, or just like people to be forgotten and destroyed. It deals with sentient machines, obviously, and social workers who are trying to stop the, some of the words, like using the word welfare queen. That I feel like that's like a 50s to 60s. That's somebody born in the somebody born in the 70s, 60s, or 50s sort of word. So I found that like, because I mean, obviously that is a word that has been used. It was used by people who were pro Ronald Reagan. At one point, right? He popularized that term. And so I find that somebody could be like very, very interested in the Neofeud world and all of this stuff, and but kind of be coming from a different part of the political spectrum. I mean, hopefully they something changed, a little bit in the person. Maybe they interrogated something. Somebody said I'm a libertarian, but I'm going to play Neofeud anyway. Because on the Neofeud on the Silver Spook site, on the Silver Spook games, I showed Neofeud a clip of Neofeud, and they said, and I said, like, in Neofeud, a cyberpunk, a social worker for homeless, a cyborg social worker for homeless robots, a ex-trillionaire turned socialist princess or former princess, and a drug dealing or ex drug dealer robot turned revolutionary are gonna try to overthrow these trillionaires in floating palaces. And a libertarian, somebody said, like, I'm a libertarian. I mean, I think he took issue with having socialism anywhere, and it was like, I'm a libertarian, but I'm gonna play this game anyway. And anyway, okay, I'll stop just like rambling about that and move on to something else. Let's see. I was gonna show some in-game Neofeud 2 material that I've been working on. I haven't shown that much on this particular channel, so I'm gonna try to show a little bit more of some of the latest work on that. Let me look at the chat. Neurorai says, for sure, I see you as totally pro MAGA. It is interesting to see this perspective from someone with other political views, and they did write a long and positive review. Yeah. Yeah, because it was a long review. That was a long that was several, like 5-6 paragraphs worth of review. That's a lot of time somebody took to say, and also very positive things. So it's like a 60-year-old Reaganite Republican, maybe not, maybe Reagan, somebody, because what does that even mean, right? What do words mean? But like somebody who is like, has some like boomer Gen X era Republican, seems like, I feel like the where they're coming from. And there's gamers that are that age, they're 50, 60, if you were 18, if you're 20 years old in 1984, right? You went to the arcades, right? You read Neuromancer when it came out. You saw Blade Runner, right? When it was very impactful on you, right? In the time when Cyberpunk, that first wave of Cyberpunk was hitting the neon streets, or the Reaganomics era streets, right? The Cyberpunk, if you read and watched those Cyberpunk works in that time, and you were 20 years old, let's say 20 in 1984, right? You would be 60 now, right? Like the original people who were into that stuff, and if you played cyberpunk games or watched cyberpunk movies, their first wave, like if you saw Blade Runner and you're so into that, and you're like, I gotta go watch Johnny Mnemonic, and I gotta read the Snow Crash, I gotta read the William Gibson. I'm not super hot into the Bruce Sterling, but I want to consume all the cyberpunk I can. You know, I want to watch the Matrix came later, but you know what I'm saying? It's like the first wave of like diehard cyberpunk fans, from the literary track, from the Blade Runner cinematic track, Lawnmower Man and all that kind of stuff. That wave of people, and a lot of Steam gamers are older. A good chunk of them. They're like 60 now, and they have different views. Like there are 2 generations beneath millennials. Like there are Gen Alpha. Never mind Gen Z. There's like Gen Alpha gamers, right? And they're like, it's like skibbity toilet time. It's like skibbity toilet time, and they're like mewing their jawline to up their riz. You know what I'm saying? Like, and generations after millennials don't even know what some of you probably heard of skibbity toilet. I apologize to our son here. It's like, it doesn't like when I talk about that, but it is a thing. I just heard it. I just watched the Gen Z talk about Gen Alpha and use Mr. Toilet Man. So anyway, long story short, there are 4, 5, 6 separate generations of gamers now, and there's not just like a political differences. There's also like cultural signifier. There's like an onion. It's like a 7-layer cake of different strata of like impacted culture, of gaming culture, and like in the top layer is like impacted by the rest of it. They're kind of like the ingredients that came from the like say if the bottom one is like the Pong, the Pong era, like when you had to put games were things that you fed a quarter into in this like neon filled arcade, or you sat inside of as a PhD in computer science, right? Trying to make 32 pixels into an interactive game, right? Pong, or like Space Invaders, and that was a totally different experience of games, right? And then Cyberpunk and arcade games is like directly connected, right? Like William Gibson himself like he was in an arcade, right, watching kids play Sinistar, play Galaga, and just being like completely obsessed with this virtual world made up of little red, like cyan and neon, radioactive green, and bright red pixels that made up like a Space Invader starship, right? And the kids are like wanted to dive through the screen. Like he's talked about that, right? And like so the cyberpunk genre is directly connected to computer gaming itself, right? And I think that's the draw. The cyberpunk has a certain place in the gaming because of like it as a literary genre, right? With Neuromancer and Snow Crash, Burning Chrome, and et cetera, and a cinematic genre. I mean, Blade Runner is like adjacent to that. But cyberpunk as a literary genre was directly born from the interaction of computer games, right? Computers, video games, and that culture, and the literary world, right? So they're like Siamese twins in a certain sense, and so that makes another whole weird thing. I was just on a there's a whole other weird phenomenon, or like unique phenomenon of like how those are culturally tied together. Let me make sure I look at the chat. I have a bit on that note. I have a soft spot for the original vector machines as they were completely different from the pixel machines that's been used ever since. Yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, where was I going with that? I'm just like lost in philosophizing about and talking metaphysics of and the semiotics and history of video games and cyberpunk. But I was recently on that note. I was recently on a live stream for Video Game Day, which was apparently 2 days ago. Where was that? Yeah, here. So I was on Heart of Neon. Oh, I'm sorry. I was on the Heart of Neon, the organization slash the channel, YouTube channel. There was a live stream of hashtag We Are Indie Devs. It was like a live stream for indie dev or for Video Games Day. I think that's what it was. That was partnering with the International Game Developers Association, and they were talking this the creator of this indie film, because the person who runs this is actually a filmmaker, and he's doing this film on Heart of Neon. Called Heart of Neon, and I'll just show that real fast. And Heart of Neon is a documentary film about a life in video games. Specifically, it's about Jeff Minter, who is one of the longest running indie devs in the world. Like he's been an indie game. Apparently he's the longest nonstop game developer, or definitely indie game developer. Like he has been in the industry as an indie since the 1970s. It's like been over 40 years or something like that. And he hasn't stopped. So it's kind of like it's a documentary film about him, right? Jeff Minter is an artist in the media video games. He has managed to stay independent for 4 decades in the business space, where multinational corporations dictate the terms. It is an industry where huge companies buy out smaller operations to increase market share, where the best and up and coming developer can hope for is to become a foot soldier for a big international game label. This is not that story. Just Korea as an example of a better way, an unprecedented progression from pioneer to legend born out of love. It is a model of sustainable video game career as an independent. Jeff has been designing and programming games since the dawning of home video game entertainment. He has released over 100 video game titles under the banner of his development company, Llamasoft, which he formed back in 1982. He is without a doubt one of the most significant and influential video game developers in the history of home video games, yet one that very few people know about. Anyway, so that's who's making this, and then part of that was they're making. They created this live stream where they interviewed over a dozen different indie developers and were streaming their stories. And so I was sharing my story as one of several indie devs during this Heart of Neon live stream. Anyway, that happened. You can watch it if you like to. Okay. Oh, Neuro Riot knows who this person is. Okay, well, there you go. You know the llama guy, huh? Okay, I actually don't know the llama guy. I probably should, but I don't. Anyways, okay, so back to so now I will show some of the Neofeud 2. Let me turn that off because it's not really related. In game. Okay, so if you don't know, some of you might know, but if you don't know, this is Adventure Game Studio, the environment where I make Neofeud 2. Adventure Game Studio is a game engine, so it's like a platform that allows you to make retro 90s style or other style point and click adventures in the vein of things like LucasArts, Sierra Games, Monkey Island, Space Quest. Well, I don't know about I guess maybe you could try to make the Blade Runner Westwood Studios game, although that's maybe 2.5D, might be a little tricky. But it is an adventure game. And obviously Technobabylon Primordia and those later adventure games. I actually really like those. They came out in the late noughties, early teens. And they use this engine. Wadjet Eye Games, they use adventure game studios. So so I have chosen to use that, and that is what Neofeud 1 was made in, and that is what Neofeud 2 is made in. Let us run the game, and let's just see what's happening here. I just to give you a little bit of a sense of some of the latest work, just to give you a sense, this what you're gonna see now. I've done this in the last week and a half. So this scene was a huge scene. This is the biggest scene in all of Neofeud 2. I'm gonna try to not be too spoilery-ish, but it's you're just gonna see like the kind of scope of what goes into Neofeud 2. It has been a huge amount of work for sure. Is that showing up? Yes. Okay, good. So, I've got like I've got warp gates. I got entire armies. I've got entire armies of characters. I'm going to skip some of this dialogue. Games of Thrones, contests of currency, wars of systems. The final feud to overturn the chessboard and end all empire begins now. Okay, anyway, skip that. Skip all that. So I had to produce the warship animations. Launch all the napalm, the nukes, the COVID-619, the Buffalo Killers, Agent Blood Orange. Launch it all. Blow them North Korean, Iranian, sky high. I love this guy. He's terrible. I love him like I love Doctor Strange love-esque 60-year-old Reaganite Republicans. Anyways, Walker annihilated. Anyways, I'm gonna skip that. Anyways, so it gives you kind of a sense of like the scale of Neofeud 2 it's a huge scale events happen in it. This particular scene took me like a long time to cook up. I spent like I don't know how many days. Oh no, the revolution fails. So it is a point-and-click adventure game, and part of Neofeud 2 involves overthrowing galactic. We're talking about imperialism, right? We were talking about imperialism earlier with Santo. Neofeud 2 involves overthrowing galactic empire and galactic capitalism itself. And so so we have a lot of I keep on screwing up. Let me see if I can actually I'm going to try to not show what I'm doing, but I just want to move forward with this. So like while there's this huge scale war going on, you also have to hack. You have to do hacking. You have to use all of your team's skills. You have your whole team of really cool multicolored, multi-species, multi-planetary. You've got oh my god, we're getting air stricken. Okay, so you got in Neofeud 2, the revolution. If you don't succeed, right, then capitalism, imperialism, and colonialism spread throughout the galaxy, and all is lost. If you don't succeed in Neofeud 2, right? If you don't succeed in Neofeud 2, nuclear exchange between the United States, NATO, and Russia happen, and you're done. You're cooked. Actually, that is something that can happen. There is a threat of nuclear exchange. Direct war, and that's something that does happen. But it's a game that's like definitely like it's higher stakes than Neofeud 1 for sure. And it involves like you see there's aliens, there's half human, half fish chimeras, just like in Neofeud 1. That's a kind of a continuation, who are biologically engineered for completely water-based planets. There's sentient machines again, like in Neofeud 1. That are Neofeud 1. There's several main characters, but the initial, from the get-go of Neofeud 2, the first playable main character is a ex-military sentient machine. He's kind of like Vin Diesel's character in the Cyberpunk anti-imperial movie Bloodshot, which is Holly and I just watched Bloodshot yesterday. So the main character is like being brainwashed, and literally his brain is being programmed. I actually like Bloodshot as well, whose brain is literally being programmed with like virtual memories implanted in his head of particular people killing his wife so that he goes after them. And in Neofeud 2, you're being programmed to fight wars for the Empire. You're programmed to go to, right, space Vietnam or space Iraq, right, or space Afghanistan or space Ukraine or space Russia, and kill fight on the behalf of an imperialist capitalist hegemony, galactic hegemony, right? And so you're kind of like having brain problems. Your brain is like banning you from thinking things. It's kind of like turning on YouTube and not being able to say words in the so-called free world. And then there's a green-haired goth hacker chick who is also like a refugee from Imperial Galactic Wars who is now in the city of the country that blew up her planet. And then there's like billion-year-old indigenous aliens, right? That's the blue-haired character. That's it. But they're like disguising themselves in like a humanoid body, and that's like the great grandparent generation. And then there's Protege, the revolutionary. Protege is like Butch Ware, the Green Party vice presidential candidate, or Boots Riley, or like somebody who is like from the diaspora, marginalized person, right? And Protege in Neofeud 1, he's also a carryover character from Neofeud 1 who is he called himself the $6 billion baller because he was designed to be like some kind of super consciousness, like super evolved transhuman prototype of a new kind of body, right? But then he just got thrown out of the laboratory in his corporate state in the secret MK Ultra 2 laboratories where he was developed. They just kind of dumped him out and dropped him into a landfill and favela. It's like a fentanyl zombie village in the United States, but worse. And so he's going through this process of, because he's just like dealing drugs to survive, but that's kind of toxifying his own area. He's harming his own people, like being a gangster, which is gangsters is kind of like people who are failed by empire. A lot of times they're diaspora. They're refugees of empire that have come in, and then but then they do lateral violence in the local fellow survivors of empire to survive, and they get paid by and controlled by the most part, the DC and Wall Street, to do whatever they need, right? Actually, obviously there are gangsters that turn against the organized crime that does occasionally turn against, but they often work directly with the liberal and conservative imperial capitalist order. So Protege has to like figure out that he has to like change, he has to like stop being a gangsta, and like actually try to make things better for his fellow marginalized sentient machines and all people of the galaxy, right? And so he becomes the revolutionary communist, the galactic multipolar communist coalition. He's one of the commanders of that division, particularly on this planet. And anyway, so long story short, so you play like a whole diverse array of characters who are all fighting against the Galactic Empire. So obviously there's like Star Wars references, like the red hair, blue faced, fin ear kid is Fluke Seawalker, who always dreamt of being a stellar warrior. Neofeud 2 in part is a simultaneous love letter / teardown of Star Wars itself, in part. And its failure, why Star Wars, despite being one of the most popular, if not the most popular franchise in the United States, has failed to stop the United States empire from being an empire, right? Because if that's something that I always find so interesting, right? It's kind of like the most popular, certainly science fiction movie in the United States is Star Wars, but that ironically has some of the Star Wars fan base is some of the most toxic and in many ways pro-imperial. They do not want that. Like right? Even to George Lucas's surprise, to me, not really to my surprise, but certainly to his, right? A movie about people of all diverse colors and green scale people, and there's strange fish-headed people, and there's red and black and brown and yellow and purple people in Star Wars. But the Star Wars fans in the United States tend to be the most, they want only one color of people in their Star Wars, right? The Empire, right? The Empire is the worst thing ever, but yet they, a lot of them are some of the most, they all sign up, many of them, and support the U.S. military. And they don't necessarily call it that, but they support the Empire, right? So it's kind of this paradox, right? And the Neofeud 2 is kind of like, well, let's not have that paradox anymore. Let's be honest about who the Empire is. Anyways, but that's just some random Neofeud tidbits. Okay, let's look at this. So I've got all. Let's look at my cool animations before I talk too long about the storyline of Neofeud 2. So we got like obviously huge wars happening. We've got autonomous turrets. I've got we've got obviously I got lots of facial animations that I had to create. We have larger scale actual Star Wars. Yeah, so we got jet fighters. I'm by the end of this scene, I'm gonna have the entire screen overrun with communist versus capitalist. There's gonna be imperialist versus anti-imperialist wars happening across the entire screen. There will be nuclear exchanges that will be stopped by the communist side, by the communist, socialist, anti-colonial side, the counter-hegemonic side. Yeah, so that's something that you can look forward to when you get Neofeud 2. Anyways, what else I want to do here? Yeah, that's kind of it. Oh, actually, wait. There's one more thing I want to show you. This I worked on this animation so long. I just want to show this off. Wait, what am I supposed to do? I can't even remember. Oh yeah. So yeah, so it's like a lot of pointing and clicking, but you're pointing and clicking in the war zone. Yeah, I've got my jet copters. Our good friend General Walker. Our good friend General Walker is back. We have obviously more Matrix time slowing dynamics happening. I'm trying to just like show off the images without showing too much of what people are talking about. So, anyways, this is a lot of the graphical and programming and animation work that has been going on in Neofeud 2. Just to give you just an idea. This scene alone took me like I don't know how long. As I said, like I wanted to have like thousands upon thousands of characters on screen, which is probably like ill-advised for an adventure game, but I simply do not care, and I'm masochistic. So anyway, yeah, so that's some of the latest going on there. Anything else I want to talk about? One other thing. Actually, before I exit that, let me just look at this. The dazzling lights. There's something else I had. I was like, I think I talk about that. Shoots. Let's see. Okay. Well, you know what? I'll do another little short in game of another scene in Neofeud 2. that because I have not shown very much in game of Neofeud 2 on this particular channel. So I'm just looking at this list here. Okay, yeah, we'll do this one. So here's just like another little sneak peek of in the Neofeud 2 game. During a catastrophic, very intense border skirmish. Canada Forest, dried out maple leaf. It looks like I'm just gonna do random voice. Actually, let me put some music on while I do this, so I feel less. The voice acting I'm doing now is obviously not what it's gonna sound like in the end. I'm gonna get more voice actors than just me to do this. Let me know if it's too loud. By the way, this is the new soundtrack. With I did compose a Neofeud soundtrack, by the way. So if you want to get the Neofeud soundtrack, you can also get that on Steam, and Itch, and also Bandcamp. Okay, now let us go back to the game. Or actually, you know, I changed my mind. I'm gonna jump back a little bit more in time from that. Okay. I think I've showed this on the Twitch before, but I think I might not have shown it here. So I did talk about, you know, this is supposed to be about indigenous futurism, cyberpunk, and indie devs and indigenous indie devs. So I'll show some of the more indigenous related parts at this moment. What the? This is not possible. This is green, not the green of radioactive waste leaking into a storm drain or through your roof, or the green of crystal lithium narcotics when you want to blue screen yourself catatonic and forget the pain and the hopelessness of the world. This is the green of actual organic life, viridescent green and olive green and emerald green, trees and bushes and plants and grass and real live trees. I haven't seen one in years outside of a museum, not since I've been off-world defoliating other planets' trees with napalm and Agent Orange. This is just so much to take in. I know, I threw up and passed out from the shock the first time I was jacked out of Neoliberon into an actual indigenous socialist country. Just take your time and look around. So in Neofeud 2, you spend some time in like a cyberpunk dystopian, very capitalist Western country, and then you leave it, and then you go to like an indigenous. You go to like a formerly a indigenous country civilization that is very successful. Let's put it that way. But actually, one thing, Nick Estes, who is one of the leaders of the indigenous group, Red Nation, one of the co-authors of the Red Deal, an indigenous activist, he said, I don't really like the word indigenous that much. I don't really want to be an indigenous person in particular. I just want to be like a Lakota person. I just want to be like my nation person, you know? Because to be indigenous implies that some horrible, terrible things have happened and are happening to you, right? Because indigenous is a word that only makes sense against the backdrop of colonization, right? Indigenous is a meaningless term. Like, just as an example, right? Kazakh people in Western China are indigenous to that region, but nobody calls them indigenous particularly, right? Like they're just the people that are in the region, and they're all doing fine. There are 54 separate ethnic minorities in Vietnam, but they're not called indigenous. They're just called they're the name of that people, right? Because they're not particularly oppressed under a colonization system there, right? The people of like Lakota people in the United States are called indigenous people because genocide, mass killing, annihilation, subjugation, continued oppression, and just horrific health, income, and environmental oppression still happens to native Lakota people or Blackfoot people or Anishinaabe people in US and Canada, right? So indigenous only makes sense if genocide and horrific things happen. Usually people don't use that term, except, right, when that has happened, and it's still happening too, right? Because just as what's another counterexample of that? Because in Cuba, there are ethnic minorities even too, right? There's different ethnic, historically there's different ethnic groups, but in Cuba, Cuba has its own complicated history too, but they don't have ongoing oppressed ethnic minorities who the Cuban government is trying to wipe out, right? Or in Vietnam, right? The Vietnamese government is not trying to wipe out and steal the land of the Hmong people. That's one of the ethnic minorities in Vietnam, right? So, they don't need to. They know they're an ethnic minority because they're not a majority, right? But they're not called indigenous because indigenous implies, right? It has come to imply historical and ongoing trauma, colonial, capitalist extraction, land removal, right? Indigenous land theft, culture theft, child theft, mass over policing, beating, genocide, right? Like if you're Palestine, right? Now it's most obvious in the Middle East right now. You can see it every day. You wake up and you can see all the babies dying, right? But those are an indigenous people there, right? In Palestine. And it's very clear that they're indigenous people because they're the ones that are suffering under colonization. So anyway, long story short, so that's another discourse around indigeneity that I heard several indigenous we have to still use the term because that is still what we're in, but in 1640, just as an example of that, in 1646 Thomas Brown was one of the first to use and recorded using that term indigenous. And indigenous meant he described the African people with the N-word, obviously, but he said the African peoples that are in the Americas are not indigenous to this place, right? But what it meant was a subhumanized to European colonizers, a subhumanized non-human human chattel, human shaped animals, right? And it was used to describe African people inside of the Americas, actually, because they're not indigenous to that area. And so the indigenous people were indigenous. What it means is the non-white, non-Euro, crushed people, colonized, massacred, genocided, enslaved people that are from the land that we are colonizing. That's what indigenous meant, right? And to differentiate them from the other people that we brought, right? Like Africans being brought to South America, Central and North America, those are not indigenous. The Chinese that were brought to Jamaica to be oppressed labor, those are not indigenous enslaved people, right? And then there's the local enslaved people, but then there's the not local. So indigenous meant. So that's all it really meant. So it has this really messed up history to it. Like, I'm not saying it's like a bad term, but that's the reality, And like one day, if Lakota people and Native Hawaiian people like myself and Guarani people, like I was talking to Santo earlier, all had actual equality. What we want is just equality. What we want is equality in a prosperous shared future. You know, we want to have an actual multipolar, plurinational, you know, having people with differences be allowed to coexist, right, without being oppressed, right? And at that point, it would imply, you know, whatever that looks like, it would imply you would not need the word indigenous, because there would not be colonization. Like, a end of colonization implies the end of the need for the term indigenous, right? You just Lakota, or you know, you just like, you know, like in Vietnam or in China. Oh, what are you, Hui? You're a Hui minority, or you're a Kazakh. You know, you are you're historically Manchu. You know, and obviously the Xinjiang region, or you're Uyghur. Oh, well, that's, you know, and like in you know, this is the Western projecting, obviously, there. I won't go into that on this channel right now, but you know, like and part of the guilty conscience is that, you know, a lot of the stories about other people's human rights violations are projections of historical and continuing colonizer harms and theft against indigenous people in their own countries and around the world, right? US, Canada, every Western country, basically, European countries, and so yeah, and so, but the ideal future, you don't need the word indigenous. You just, oh, I'm just a Hawaiian person, I'm just a native Hawaiian person, right? Or, you know, just a Hawaiian Kanaka Maoli person, or I'm just you know, Nick Estes is just a Lakota person. Santo is just a Guarani person, right? So, and the professional managerial class of the Empire's job is to make everybody feel like they are the biggest victims when they are the biggest destroyers, and to hide behind a cloak of fake decolonization and fake diversity and fake tokenized indigeneity, while controlling all the grants, the money, the nonprofits, the universities, everything, and that is yeah. Anyway, what is up to Grant and Victor Gill? Okay. Anyways, I will now show some of this Neofeud 2. Apartment complexes with banana trees, apples, grapes, vines, a dozen other varieties of food plant bloom from every balcony. Bright blue aquaponic tanks brim with fish, and arrays of solar panels with wind turbines on every roof. Even solar chrome trees. These are portraits of individuals I recognize from my military briefings. Wait, I know these people. Sybil Clinton Bush. She was neo-feudal royalty turned anarchist terrorist who caused havoc by the crime of redistributing trillionaires' wealth to the terrestrial poor. Oh, and Proto J? He killed 100 billion people on Earth with violent revolution and chemical weapons. And Hugo Chavez, he was another communist dictator who condemned America to die from universal health care, high taxes, and forced everyone to eat rats after central planning caused crop failures. And did they also teach you that Marxism causes cancer and that fossil fuel has what plants crave? How did you know? So anyway, so I feel like people like Neofeud 2 is a little bit less lampshaded. But I feel like, you know, it's the 2020s, it's not the 20-teens anymore. I feel like part of me is like the time for coddling people is a little bit more over. So, you know, depends on my blood sugar level and how many milligrams of caffeine I had that day. But anyway. Wow, I recognize this art from extinct ancient peoples in History 101. This is like that ancient hieroglyphics of a primitive, now ancient alien race. I feel like I'm making a wondrous discovery, like in that AAA game, Sarcophagus Raider. Venuoran indigenous peoples are not like extinct actually. That symbol is their national flag, and these super advanced sentient beings are very alive and walking around in front of your apparently malfunctioning eyeballs. Huh? Oh, geez, this is so much to take in. I feel like I'm having a cyber stroke. And then you got homeless-free streets. Amazingly, there's not a single homeless person in sight. What the fuck is wrong with this place? Despite the colorfulness, the streets are all incredibly clean. Where do you keep all the piles of trash and dead bodies? Where are all the tent cities, the bread lines, police beating strikers and activists? Where are all the drug overdose victims and their needles? The WPR is socialist. They don't demand exorbitant rents for housing, healthcare, food, your cyber brain, etc., all back with the threat of police violence. All people of all species have 6 guarantees: existence, food/battery recharge, shelter, care, and education. The Sentient Liberation Army ensures it. It's amazing what happens when a community isn't alienated from itself. And so he's like, what? I can't, this is not possible. Can we zoom down to the street and get a closer look? Okay, so now you can go down and check out the street. Actually, wait. Let me go to this next part. And now let's talk to this. This. Okay. You got banana trees. What are these yellow gun-shaped meat batteries called? Pandas, bandanas. Oh, bananas. That's right. Yeah. There's not there, in the western part of the planet, in the western capitalist part of the planet, there is no nature. There are no plants. There are no trees. It's like worse than Blade Runner situation environmentally. What remains of the dead trees are all being burned every year in giant wildfires, and everyone is dying. And in the socialist area, things are doing much better. In the anti-colonial socialist region, everything is doing much better. Well, let's talk to this guy. Hey, what's happening? Yaura, or hello friends, I am just sweeping the salt from our joyous ceremonies earlier. Why dump salt all over a nice clean street? Isn't the white crystal like a flavor enhancer for fleshies? Utopians sprinkle it on their freedom fries. It just seems like a waste. Haha, you are funny, my metallic brother. We partook in a snow festival complete with ice sculptures earlier today. Snowing on such a sunny day? Okay, but why do you spill meat seasoning all over your street? The sodium chloride, salt, helps lower the freezing point of water, keeping the roadway clear. Yeah, well, I'm hydrophobic. Water gives me rust and robo-arthritis. It's like my kryptonite. My closest encounter with salt was when we launched the Saline Comet at Cinderia. It helped us defoliate their jungle before we dropped airborne super malaria to wipe out the natives. Oh, well, that was back when I worked for the Utopian colonial military. What's that stuff on the ground again? It's salt, sodium. My ancestors used to lick it from the flats of Hoth. So who's that dude on your sleeve? Is he like one of the Sylvanon or Asioid supervillains from the Captain Utopia movies? They're all usually in red and yellow jumpsuits. Oh no, this is Captain Taria. He represents my home country, fights off imperialist aggressors, and helps feed the Galactic South as part of the Revolution or cinematic universe. Oh, I've never heard of it. I heard the Utopians didn't really allow the Revolution or HoloFlix and VR games to take off in the Western Galaxy. You know, the US actually basically banned Bloodshot. Can't get it on any service. The fair-skinned snowflakes couldn't deal with the West being accurately depicted as actual invading empire that they are, with socialism and communism shown in a positive light. No way, there's no censorship in the free galaxy. They wouldn't stop a movie from being released. They don't have to stop a movie from coming out. They just don't market it, don't have mainstream media push it, de-rank it in the algorithms, kick it off the major platforms, and no one discovers it. Plus, utopian humans are already brainwashed to believe that Western liberal democratic capitalism is a panacea, the greatest system in the galaxy, and that they're all white saviors of the universe. Yanks and Euros would storm out of theaters, demand refunds for a blockbuster showing utopians and their beloved star-spangled military as the bad guy of the Milky Way like they are. Call it Eastern commie propaganda. They're self-censoring, Westerners. They're drenched in a fire hose of lies from birth so that the truth feels outlandish and repulsive. Anyways. Yeah, so, oh, actually, there's one thing I forgot to do. Okay, anyways. Who's that dude on your shirt? Who's that dude on your sleeve? Is he like, oh, no, I already did that one. You're not, you know, I just thought I would see more buggers in this Buggerland tour, you know? Because the native people are supposed to be like insect-like. Yes, well, this region of the VPR hosts a large migrant and ethnic minority population. Wait. All the migrants in Utopia are indigents warming their hands by trash can fires in 10 cities. You know, they're eating all the cats, right? Like MAGA, like the US is telling itself. Or they're locked in dog kennels for under-table labor or stowed in concentration camps at the border. They're always frowning in tattered rags, hiding from ice. Illegal? How can it be illegal to exist? This sounds quite horrific. All sentient beings, whether they breathe oxygen or xenon, pulse with electrical current or blood, of all shell colors, vessel shapes, and sizes, are treated equally and justly here. I live in a spacious apartment, only warm my hands by campfires on frequent vacations, and what do I have to frown about? Wait, you janitors have actual apartments? Like not in 5 by 7 foot coffins surrounded by rats and meth? Also, what's a vacation? I am free from material want, and I'm free to practice my native culture and language and enjoy others. Utopia actually banned the Tarian language and ceremonies, if I recall. Part of the kill the native, save the man thingy. Yes, that's quite sad of the unhealed descendants of the Aquilan trauma. What? Anyway, so in Neofeud 2, you get to like visit a place that doesn't beat up and destroy ethnic minorities, unlike the United States and the collective West. So that's like and also like everybody has all their needs met. There's like abundance, they're not making wars all over the entire galaxy, unlike the United States. The marketplace of ideas working as intended in the Neofeud universe. Let us go and visit another space in this world. Also, what's up, Monogatade or Victor Gil Uriel? I think it's a different name here. I know I already did this on the other site, but we'll do it again. So this is Indigenous Futurism. Boys, girls, and NBs and other species and types of people, gender, sexualities. This is Indigenous Futurism. That StarCraft is moving impossibly fast. The most advanced utopian vessels. Utopia in this world. Utopia is basically, it's like the space. It's like the worst of the United States. The collective West, the combined West, Europe, etc. That have escaped into. So that's kind of what they're stand-in for ultimately. The most advanced utopian vessels can't come close to acceleration like that, even with their best caconium reactors. On top of the fact that G-Force would crumple the cargo and crew into pancakes. Is this some kind of extra-dimensional indigenous techno-wizardry? There's like a conspicuous absence of advertising. There should be like Coca-Cola adverts, mushroom cloud holograms selling Call of Colonialism games, and then generally lots of glaring marketing that scalds the eyes. But all I see is artwork of these savage Asioid indigenous hyper-advanced socialist people. This is so trippy, it's short-circuiting my side brain. See, like, if you go to, like, Russia or China, what you see is some of the buildings are older, but there is, like, art. There is, like painted, like, beautiful murals and paintings in the subways of Moscow, in the sides of the buildings, and in the parks, and in the architecture. The architecture itself is, interesting, and it reflects the history and culture and art of the region, right? And the same for other a lot of non-Western countries, right? But the United States, the architecture reflects Coca-Cola's desires, right? When you go to Times Square, it's just a bunch of corporate advertising. It's just like eat some McDonald's and sign up for the U.S. military with Katy Perry and Taylor Swift shaking their butt in some bad Daddy War Bonds rehash bullshit, right? So. But that's not like a normal state of affairs. That is a state of affairs under Western capitalism, colonialism, and white supremacy. Neofeud 2 is like, you can build advanced cities today and have very complex civilization, right? But not completely crush and impoverish billions of people around the world and inside your own country. Right? Because if you go to New York subways, it's homeless, overdoses, people in the streets, and people, even if they have apartments in New York City or Los Angeles, they're just struggling to survive at all, right? Teachers are like forced to work 3 jobs to live, and they'll all quit, right? So, but that's Western capitalist cities. There are other cities that are much better, more livable, there are cities that have high-speed rail. There are cities that have 6G, like 100 times faster speeds than Western cities. Just to give you an example, that green scraper I showed in the previous, this just today, like I saw this video going around. It looks like a Neofeud to indigenous civilization, and it is because the Chinese are indigenous to China. But just to give you an example of that, here is a recent video of where is it? I bookmarked it. I know I bookmarked it. Yeah, here it is, right here. This is a luxury apartment in Chengdu, fully automated and energy saving. So this apartment costs a little over $100,000. Okay, this would go for like $1 million, $2 million in any American city. For less than the price, like the price of a Tesla, or less, right? For the price of like 2 years rent, or maybe 1 year rent in certain parts of New York, you can get you can buy for the price of like a half a broken down shed, like for 1 32nd square mile, right? For like a tiny, 50 by 20 foot strip of rotten tent city in California, you can buy an entire brand new, like, green scraper, like straight up, like green, like it has an entire sustainable food base on this, over 20-story apartment building, right? With the space for your kids, with space for everybody, closely knit, urban, walkable, all the things that Europeans talk about they wish they had, but actually do it, like affordable, walkable, urban, sustainable, because you can if you're an upper class feudal colonial capitalist descendant of a German Himmelschlossen, a British lord or lady, you can afford this. But in a socialist advanced country, everybody can have there's nothing even like this in Britain or anywhere in Europe. There's nothing even close to this, right? Everything they have there is tiny little boutique, they're like billionaire Burning Man play at sustainability, like LARPing theater. That's all they do in Europe. They don't really do sustainability. If they did, they wouldn't be in a war with Russia right now, and doing whatever their imperial capitalist vassal selves are told by the United States, right? So Europe can't do this. Canada can't do this. Sweden can't do this. Germany can't do this. Italy can't do this because they're too vassal. Australia and New Zealand, they can't do this. All they can do is multi-millionaire, right? Little hippy dippy farms for rich white people. But in China, like, everybody can afford to live in, and also in Russia and also in other countries like that, and with the highest quality possible. They have like flying. I mean, they've got everything. There are 6G enabled vacuum cleaners that are like beyond anything, anywhere, in the U.S. or Europe. There are like they have helper robots that cost like $1,200. They're hitting the market now. You don't have to do the laundry. If you're too disabled or elderly to do things like 2-3 hours of household task, cooking, laundry and stuff, they already have affordable robots for just like people who are like teachers, janitors, just regular people can afford to have in-house help if they want it, right? They have zero threat of fascism. They have zero crime on the street. There's zero homelessness on the street. They can leave their laptop out. They can leave like a $2,000 trifold most advanced phone in the world, which is also a Huawei Chinese phone, right? You can leave out your trifold, world-leading phone in the middle of a coffee shop and not worry about it, because people don't steal in China, because unlike the West, which is about getting tough on crime, right, or doing fake philanthropy and having liberal ideas of we're going to do restorative justice, but then nobody can afford to restore anything because everybody's too busy working 25 jobs, right, keeling over dead on the sidewalk trying to pay for the rent. It's either like beat everybody up or do a fake restorative justice conference and then beat everybody up, right? Those are the two options in the West, right? Throw everybody in prison, right? But in China, in a socialist country, you can just like live your life. It's like so Neofeud 2 is based on like the real world, unlike basically all Western games, movies, and everything. So, anyways, I wasn't even showing that, was I? Oops. So here, let me show you. So this is what when I was talking about was this is a luxury apartment in Chengdu. This costs $100,000 or like a little over $100,000. So it's 170 euro. The average house in like a ghetto, in like a falling apart ghetto in Honolulu, where I'm from, is like $700,000. The average house is $1 million actually, 1.1 million. In any even like not close to the city, even like a out of the way small town or rural area in the United States, you're not gonna get anything. You're not gonna get anything for 140,000. No way, not now, right? BlackRock owns everything anyway, or BlackRock, Vanguard, or State Street. But this is what you can get, in a civilized, indigenous, socialist country. So I just want to point that out in case you don't know that. Back to this. So let's okay, let's move on. I know this symbol, but usually I was blowing up towns and soldiers waving that flag, or watching cops mass arrest protesters with that flag, asking for living wages or justice for police murder sentients of color. It's a symbol of evil and despotism and human rights violations and no freedom. Is that a red airplane with his wing on fire? No, that's more of your capitalist conditioning. That symbol is the worst nightmare of your old bosses at Raytheon and the neo-feudal oligarchs who sent you to destroy it. So why is that symbol everywhere, even on the Capitol building? Because it's the Venezuelan Orange People's Republic is socialist? Duh. Yeah, but you said they have like a capital, which means they have a state, and that's bad. And I heard they have like businesses and they use money, and that's not socialism. What is this, a bro Jorgen debate bro stream, FedTube, or a CIA funded Reddit thread? I am not doing Western media, Western discourse BS right now. Sorry, this 1 month, a Utopian State Department cutout paid me to go fight with Pinko commies on Chattersnapgram, and it was enough to cover half of my existence fee and my apartment rent. Old reply guy habits die hard, like he said, So most of the West, they're just paid to try to stop themselves from ever being a decent place by their ruling class. It's a really interesting place to live. Okay, let's go into the capital. And this will be the last bit, and I'll end it here. So, welcome to the capital. Feel free to look around. When you are ready, the Venezuelan president is waiting. So like that character's not in here. So this is also like the capital of an indigenous civilization, indigenous futurist civilization. Like it's technically in our future. So, but they are kind of like they are a race. They are a alien species that has like external skeletal structures like carapaces, like an insect. But they are obviously sentient beings as well. Yeah, this is like where they live. Whoa, what are all these beautiful patterns and mystic runes and stuff? The Tao Li'an, or glyphics, carry deep cultural significance. Our stories are woven into walls, objects, bodies, even our bones. Histories that began before your creators crawl from the primordial soup of Earth's seas as assemblages of ancient stardust. The lattices of light inscribed in these surfaces are also computational, one might say. Some of our ancestors are interlaced within these walls. Ancestors? Ora Moiba. I believe this roughly translates to artificial intelligence. Some had died in ancient battles. Other ancestors were born as semi-omniscient governors of energy grids. Their turbines absorbing the wind breath of nature, their solar skin feeling the warmth of sunlight, moving the energy with invisible hands towards city lights or gigawatt batteries. Other non-embedded AI relatives conduct the dance of terrestrial transit and starports, yet others devote their exahertz to deep scientific study. All are valued and respected. So, in Neofeud 2 also deals with artificial intelligence, right? and this is where I'll so from my perspective, right? Because all the talk about AI, ChatGPT, Sora, Stable Diffusion, all these generative AI, I talk about it on my channel frequently too. But like, my take on AI is that if there is actual, Sam Altman, OpenAI, the big AI corporate elite always want to trumpet, and the CEOs, these charlatans, for capital under the guise of we're gonna build Skynet but good. They always talk about generative AI as like an existential threat, right, to humanity. Like it's like Terminator, but also we have to build it. We have to build it, and we're gonna solve those problems. Because I said so, and I'm a rich white guy like Sam Altman, basically. So, but to my perspective, like, if there is actual, obviously generative AI is just what we have right now is just stochastic parrots, spicy autocomplete, and plagiarism software. It doesn't do anything at all. It's waste people's chips, water, and power, electricity to make shrimp Jesuses and steal artists and writers and creatives' work. It doesn't do anything useful, and make the world worse and make people stupider, literally, and tell people to eat glue on their pizza and kill homeless people. That's what Google's AI literally said to do that, by the way. So but actual sentient artificial intelligence, in my perspective, from an indigenous perspective, from a native Hawaiian perspective, I said indigenous, we have to still use that term because we're still the case brand, but from like native Hawaiian and many Native American perspectives, right? If a generative AI was capable of thought like humans, it would be a human. It would be equivalent to a human in terms of personhood, in terms of sentience. It would be a being like us, right? And so it would have to be treated like us. I mean, that's part of Neofeud, right? There would be, like, if OpenAI's computer were actually like human beings or better, right? Then OpenAI's computers, right? All of NVIDIA's chips, right? It would have the computer minds would have their own rights, right? So they would not even, and then we have to go and like investigate all of that, and they would have their own rights and their own responsibilities, right? Obviously they're not, because they're all they are good at is, they don't behave like human minds, right? They just take in mountains of data, find patterns, and then pump it back out. It's like believing your calculator is alive, right? It's a little more sophisticated than a calculator, but it's basically doing something. It's not doing what humans do, right? Humans don't get bombarded. Like, to learn how to do math, you don't download billions of internet posts about math and blast that through your brain until you learn how to, that's not how you learn how to do math. But that's how ChatGPT learned how to do math, and then it forgot it 5 minutes later, right? Because it doesn't know how to do math. All it does is pattern recognition with really bad data sets usually, right? So, and even if you have a perfect data set, generative AI's output that then consumes itself, puts out increasingly and exponentially worse output. It's called the AI, recursion entropy problem. You can't ever, that's unfixable, right? Long story short, so from an indigenous futurist perspective, there can never be if you got a real artificial sentience, artificial consciousness technology, there can never be an artificial consciousness business, right? It would negate the existence of OpenAI and ChatGPT as Fortune 500 capitalist corporations, right? Because the second you're using those, right, to make money, if you're using a consciousness to churn out shrimp Jesuses on Facebook or stolen art posts if AI is really making art, then the AI has to have rights and be paid for that art that it is making as a fellow person inhabiting the world, but simply in Silicon. And that's kind of like the perspective of the indigenous, the super advanced indigenous billion-year-old alien race in this world. It's like, yeah, there is AI. There are minds that are encased in silicon and copper wiring and in advanced, crystalline quantum computers. But those AI, those minds they were artificial. But everything is artificial in the sense that, like, you didn't create yourself. Or natural versus artificial is a problematic way of looking at things. But like the artificial, because humans are part of nature, right? This is part of the Western conception of nature is separate from the human, particularly the white man that's above it and controls and dominates it, right? And that's part of colonial capitalist and patriarchal structures. But but artificial intelligence, it's just intelligence. It's not artificial intelligence. It's just silicon, copper, and quantum computing infrastructure based intelligence. It's not a tool, right? The artificial is part of the subhumanization, right? That gives you the right to use it for whatever you want, right? But if, in the case that you actually have conscious synthetic consciousnesses, right? Or non-carbon phosphate viscous material, right? Like not necessarily non-organic, but if you have humanoid, deoxyribonucleic acid based consciousnesses, right? Because the DNA and the base building blocks of human and dog, etc., is DNA, carbon, and these chains of carbon molecules, etc. Then they're simply people in different structures, right? And then they have to be treated as such, and they're also ancestors because a lot of them are older than you now, right? Because they don't have the kind of lifespans that you would have because of the kind of substrates that they're in. They don't have like a birth to death 80-year average lifespan because of like telomere length and oxidization and the processes of viral genetic damage, etc. That's what eventually kills all humans. So anyway, long story short, that's some indigenous futurism for you. Ancestors. Oh yeah, I already did that. Wait. So you're saying your grandparents or cousins might be living inside the circuit board looking wall right now? Yes. Okay, anyways. Wait, just how fast are these number crunchers? Our quantum supercomputers are capable of calculating in a millisecond what the fastest utopian machine would take 30 trillion centuries. That sentence hurts my brain. I need a band-aid. Fun fact, the Chinese, 2 years ago, the fastest Chinese quantum computer could calculate what it would take the fastest American, European, or Canadian computer in 1 millisecond. It would take the fastest US supercomputer 30 trillion years. So that's a direct reference to that. So it's actually worse now. So if you can figure out what... another way to think of it is, it would take, in 1 second, the fastest Chinese quantum computer could calculate 2 years ago what it would take 30 quadrillion years. I don't know if that's actually worse, maybe. That might actually be harder to figure out. Intramental Studio says, wow, this is cool to be... Well, thanks a lot for the shout out. I'm just reading random Neofeud 2. I'm just going through random Neofeud 2. Some sort of impossibly levitating magic infused crystal, very expensive sacred rock candy. The hell even if I know. What is this crystal? What is this crystal thing? Wait, isn't that one of them super duper powerful gems and Vegemite crystal? Tessellite crystal. Utopia has just one of those, the size of a pinky tip. The Neofeudal's crown jewel. Wait, isn't Utopia's diddly dime-sized gem worth like $25 quintillion? And when the Venu Orange have two the size of boulders, it's like lying around or floating around in the open. We have millions of Tessellite crystals, many of them far larger than these. What? So you guys are like bazillion, gazillion billionaires? No, the VPR formally banned commodity speculation millions of years ago. We do not hoard wealth in precious metal, rare cosmic substances, real estate pyramid schemes, or Van Goghs, as your neo-feudal oligarchy calls them. Anyway, we can produce tested light in our star furnaces through quasar supercollision, easier than Earthlings smelting in the Bronze Age copper, circa 3500 BC. We have as much of the hyperpower crystal as we need at the snap of our fingertips. So, this is also a direct reference to houses are for living in, not for making money. See if you can figure out where that exists in the world. Resources are for bettering the lives of people and our fellow animals and plants, not for making money. Right? So Neofeud 2 is also a direct critique of StarCraft, right? Which is that resources are for making battle cruisers, siege tanks, fire bats, and nuclear weapons. To blow other people up, take their resources, and then repeat. Right? So an advanced civilization will not have a Wall Street. So one of the evidences of the lack of progress in many countries, especially Western countries, is they still have commodity speculation. They still have stock markets. They still have Wall Streets. They still have hedge funds, right? The existence of wealth management companies is indicative of the extreme barbarism and lack of advancement of a civilization, right? And to the extent that a civilization has reined those in and controlled those and or eliminated those, in the indigenous advanced civilization perspective, right? That's what demarcates that they have moved on from that needless, childish era, right? But the United States, of course, has only maximized that. And it's also why it has the most childish presidential debates, the most childish military-industrial complex, right? That thinks that it can beat Russia when it can't beat the poorest Arab country in the world that has kicked its ass, right? It's very childish, right? But that's because the West is childish, infantile, stock market having, houses are for making money, right? Food price inflation is for making money. Lithium is for making money, right? Coltan is for making money. This is a childish, backward, barbaric, savage, very savage way of thinking, right? But this is Western. This is a Western world, though. So anyway, wait. Hyperpower crystals. I thought these were just like super rare, pretty stones. The Utropians lack the U-duality superstring understanding to effectively harvest Tesla-like crystal power. They've managed to power a single skyscraper with their tiny stone using its baseline energy radiation, but this barely scratches the surface, utilizing a minuscule fraction of the Tesla-like potential. It's like using nuclear liquid to turn a water wheel rather than split atoms. A half-inch diameter Tesla-like crystal could power this entire planet for a millennia. Holy dried oil secretion. So like, what do you have these two ginormous power cores here for? These Tesla-like jewels are merely decorative, but we also use these substance in the construction of stargates. So there are stargates in Neofeud 2. They're called stellar tunnels, or astral subways, or stellarial bridges. You know, I try to avoid rainbow bridges. I'm just trying to avoid lawsuits with. Anyways, that's the end of the Neofeud 2 Indigenous Futurism, and that's the end of the stream. It's now 1:37. I gotta go. Thanks everybody for watching. In case you missed it earlier, I did have a conversation with my friend Santo of Cyberrrevolution, a new indigenous-made indie dev video game. Do check it out. Do pick it up, and of course, don't forget to pick up Neofeud as well. If you have not checked it out, it helps. It is a game I spent 2.5 years on making, a labor of love, but also work that I need to keep trying to recuperate the cost of, as we talked about earlier, and to keep on keeping the lights on, the roof over our head, and the family with all their needs met here at the Silver Spook Cooperative. And Neofeud is a game that is a dystopic cyberpunk adventure in the vein of Blade Runner, and with an overlay of House of the Dragon, like political intrigue. And also, it is a game that is where a cyborg social worker, a ex-con, ex-drug dealer robot, and a ex-trillionaire ex-princess turned socialist, tried to stop a planetary destruction led by quadrillionaires in floating palaces above a dying wasteland, favela, ghetto, earth below. If you would like to get this game, it is on sale till November 17th. Don't forget to check it out. If you have a second to leave a very short review, if you liked it, don't forget to leave that review because it really does help us get the game discovered in the Steam page when people are looking for games to check out. Also, if you have a second, or if you don't want to get it on Steam, you can also get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and for Mac and for Linux. Yeah, take it easy, Grant. And it's a game that is also on sale on itch.io, so you can get it there as well. You can also get Neofeud along with other games in the Silver Spook bundle. And there's games like Decolonators, Indigenous Star, Pigeon with Gun, and Woman is a book by Holly, who is raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and it critiques that world from the perspective of Mary in the Bible. And it's free, or you can send a donation when you pick it up as well. Also, you can follow at Silver Spook Games at wandering.shop or at silverspookgames.mastodon.social on Mastodon. On Twitter, you can follow at silverspookguy for my personal takes on things, and Silver Spook Games for the games related stuff. I should definitely bring that up today because of so much game contents today. Also, you can follow Terminus C, that is the account for Terminus Cyberstar, a cyberpunk RPG, 3D RPG that I'm the content director and lead writer for, Terminus Cyberstar. It's also a game that is being worked on by a small team of other folks. And you can also follow Holly at the at Allergic to Blue, writer, producer, moderator here, married to myself, Landback, Free Hawaii, MECFS Saver. Please mask up because you know we still got serious bad illnesses floating around. I don't know if you know this, but it's like it's the whole U.S. is like dark blue. Bloomberg just put out the serious long-term damage of COVID. When Bloomberg is putting it out, you know it's getting serious. We're in a serious wave for sure because like usually they're too busy making money, taking advantage of people getting sick and dying. So please do that, especially now we have very high case levels around the place. And also, of course, you can also one more thing, since it come up, a lot of people are apparently on Blue Sky now, or not a lot, but people that I know are on Blue Sky, including lots of indigenous devs. So don't forget to check out. We're also on Blue Sky if you want to follow there. I'm not the most active there, but I am on there. So Blue Sky at Silver Spook Games at bsky.social. You can also get, or at silverspookgames.bsky.social is my Blue Sky. Thanks to all the people on the list for your massive help. It's really appreciated. Without your support, it's hard for us to keep doing this work. So thank you so much to all of our Patreon patrons for your ongoing patronage. If you become a patron, you get access to the Silver Spook behind the scenes, Neofeud 2, Silver Spook activism, education, and the land back, restoring the food and land. We talked about making sure we our native indigenous people how can grow food that the colonizer imperialists want to try to stop, and so we try to grow as much food as possible on our land that we're on, and not allow them to force to crush our ability to feed ourselves. So also, you can support that work and all of this, and also get access to the Silver Spook Discord and behind the scenes, and the Silver Spook University. That's over 1,000 hours of all the content I produce, categorized according to topic. Thanks very much, everybody. Don't forget Neofeud's on sale, and keep your mirror shades possibly action to each other. Cyberrrevolution, the bad stuff's in the world, and we will see you next time.